What's my childhood abuse story? I'm Jessica Go, trauma coach in childhood abuse, and I thought I share with you why is it that this work of empowering burnt out professionals and highly successful entrepreneurs all over the world, because of my own journey. And I feel it's important for me to share with you why it's needed more than ever to wake up the consciousness of humanity, because we're just a time bomb ticking away due to unresolved childhood traumas. I was born and brought up in Sydney, Australia, and my parents are Chinese Malaysian. And they wanted to provide me a life that was full of abundance, freedom, and success. They worked very hard in jobs and then eventually running their own business, selling hardware tools in the markets on the weekends and running a hardware store on weekdays. And along this journey, I was programmed with all sorts of things. Poverty consciousness, where I had to slave away by working in the markets on the weekends with my parents instead of having fun and hanging out with my friends and live an actual life. The other thing I was programmed with was oppression and sexual shame. I was crippled with anxiety, anger, and grief. To the point of 16, I was so numbed, I could not feel anymore. Why does that happen? It's because there was so much rage that I was stuffing down in my system, because it's not seen and taken very well for a female to express herself, especially in my culture. And my first experiences of abuse was at the age of 8. My dad was teaching me the timetables, and I asked him, why is 0 times 3 equals 0? And he raised his voice and yelled at me, saying, "You're stupid, you're useless, how can you not understand? I just showed you." And I just shut down. I was so scared that he would hit me. So I stopped asking questions. I stopped giving myself permission to express myself. And at the age of 8 again, I was kicking my brother down the stairs because I wanted him to hurry up to leave the house for us to go to the markets on the weekend to help our parents. And obviously my brother got upset as he was younger than me and I was kicking him. That's me being in my childlike play and behavior. And my dad slapped me across the face as soon as I got down the stairs. And my mum laughed at me. I was so scared. I was reminded that it wasn't safe to be myself. And as I hopped into the van with my mum and my brother with our dad, my mum said, "Why did you kick your brother?" And she started laughing, and she kind of made the whole thing as a joke of me being slapped. And I felt humiliated that my own mum wouldn't even support me. And as I start to grow into puberty as a teenager, I had two uncles living with us who came from Malaysia, and they were helping my parents with running the business. And as a teenager, I was exposed to a lot of things around my own sexuality, that I had an uncle who sexually abused me. He would look at me funny. He would touch me inappropriately on my thighs, on my torso, and he would make comments and whistled at me. And I was only a teenager. I thought that all I could do was ignore it, but I couldn't. I didn't have anyone to turn to because I never felt safe in my family dynamic. The other thing was my father. He had a sex addiction. He turned to pornography, mistresses and hookers, where he recorded himself having sex with a hooker on his phone. And that really broke my heart. I would throw his porn magazines in the bin and deleted pornography off his computer. I even found a condom in his trousers. And I felt so angry and so much hate and resentment towards him for having this addiction by not spending time with his family and instead running away through sex. I felt I didn't have the father that I wanted, and this created my abandonment anxiety and rejection. He was the first male role model in my life who has shown me what love is, and it was really dysfunctional. I was deeply ashamed of being a female, that I was hit for speaking my truth, that I felt disgusted for having a vagina, because that's how women are being objectified in my culture. And this developed a lot of trust issues that I had with men, jealousy and insecurities that I had within myself that showed up in my adult relationships. I would attract men who were emotionally unavailable, just like my father. They were either married, coming out of a de facto relationship or an engagement, or they just had emotional baggage from their previous relationships. I would turn to men because I was looking for love in the wrong places. I didn't know what love was. And I would compromise my self-worth by having sex with him, even when I didn't want to. But I knew that that's how I could get their attention and their affection. And guess what? Those relationships are never sustainable. They're never lasting. I started to live my dad's life. I became him subconsciously. At the age of 26, I had 2 property investments cash flow positive, and I created my own wealth in my own right, working in customer service roles as a beauty therapist, pharmacy assistant, call center. I didn't have a degree. I wasn't academically bright. I was so caught up reliving the impacts of the abuse that I endured in my family. I was always made fun of by my parents for being hot-tempered, for having an opinion. And I felt like, why is it that no one can truly accept me for who I am? Is there something wrong with me? Was I born in the wrong family? And I experienced bullying in my primary school and high school life, where I was picked on for my weight. And there was this expectation that I had to be slim in order to be accepted as an Asian woman. Funny enough, in high school, I was picked on by a bunch of Asian boys, and they called me fat boy because I was overweight for an Asian teenager. And guess what? I was attracting my father in these experiences, where as a teenager, my mum would give me a strapless padded bra, and she said, "Your dad bought this for you, and your dad says that you should lose weight." Can you see how the programming works? So being brought up in a dysfunctional family, I didn't know what love was. I didn't know what it's like to be accepted. I didn't know how I could feel safe as a female when I was constantly being objectified, and to be trained as a servant, that my dad would get angry at me if I fold up his clothes inside out. Why is this expected of me? Because that was the conditioning that my parents were brought up with. However, this isn't my truth. I didn't come here to be a servant to any man or to anyone. I came here to set myself free from the old programming so I could truly be sovereign and complete. At the age of 29, I sold both of my investment properties, receiving 6 figures in my bank account, and demolished it through an online dress business that was basically running like a charity. I was living in a shared garage, and I was deeply enraged with a married man that I dated, and it wasn't working out. I was so livid. I was full of hatred. I was blaming everyone for my pain except for myself. And as my last relationship coaching session ended, I could not afford any more sessions because I only had $100 in my bank account. And in that last session, my coach said to me, "Jess, you did this to yourself." And that's when the light bulb moment hit me. I can't believe I was living in denial. I can't believe I was the one who gaslighted myself, thinking that I could make millions from this dress business, thinking that this married man will marry me, that I was the cause of my own upsets and triggers. And as I started my recovery at the age of 26, and I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and having spent close to almost $100,000 in therapy and self-development, becoming a better human being, breaking away layers and layers and layers of old programming and conditioning. I now know the woman who I came here to be, and that is the light that's in my heart. I am so grateful for every single experience that has come my way, because without it, I wouldn't be here today. This is why I'm so passionate about empowering men and women all over the world who have been raped, who had their hearts broken, who suffer from panic attacks, anxiety, and a deep sense of rage where society and their own therapists are frowning upon them from their truest expression of themselves. And this is why I was so called to do this work. It's not about making money. It's about raising your consciousness, my consciousness, and the consciousness of humanity, so you and I can live in a world that is full of love and full of light. If my story resonates with you in some shape or form, and you've tried mainstream therapy and it hasn't worked out in your favor, and you are willing to do whatever it takes to get to the other side, to be coachable and accountable for your pain, you might be interested in my free web class, Let Go of Rejection and Relationship Abuse from the Impacts of Childhood Trauma. Click on the link below and it will bring you to a different page for you to register. I look forward to seeing you there, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, then the bell icon, then the all button, so you get the latest notifications around childhood abuse. And feel free to share it with your loved ones who are suffering in silence, so you and I can continually raise the consciousness of humanity. May you be the light that's in your heart.